What is up, everybody? The boys are back. Football season is upon us, and season 2 of the Sko Show is here. I'm one half of your host, Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Media by AP. And joining me today, the man himself, the forever buff himself, Mr. Chase Howell.
Let's go.
Let's go, baby. I'm amped. I am ready. All I want to do is open up my sports book and bet these games already.
I've missed you, AP, dude. It's been a couple months for us. Since May? When did we shut it down? No, probably April.
Yeah, I want to say probably right around when the Nuggets and the Avs were in the playoffs. And to be fair, there wasn't a ton to talk about. I mean, what are the big storylines outside of the one that played out today, which we'll get to here in a couple of minutes about this Middle Eastern connection and the Buffs and the NIL and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think a lot of dominoes really fell for the Buffs in the last 3 or 4 months. I think it's just been more general anticipation for the season.
A relative low-key summer, which is usually good. Usually if there's news going on in the summer when it comes to college football, guys are usually getting into trouble. There's some drama going on. I feel like it was pretty low-key for the most part. Obviously, everybody's excited for the season. There's a lot of talking going on Twitter, a lot of back and forth. I feel like that's where you're getting the most of it right now is all these people that just want to hate. And some of us have to get back at them at times.
Yeah, the haters are going to hate, and it's funny because once this season starts, and we're recording this on Thursday, so we're essentially a week away.
We are so close, dude. We're
right there. It's going to be incredible. But I already know the haters are coming out in droves the second that this season starts, especially, and I don't think it's going to happen, but if CU, for whatever reason, lays an egg in that first game against NDSU, it is going to be a toxic place on social media, my friend.
They can't wait for that to happen, and it sucks for them because that's never going to happen. I have so many tweets bookmarked. Oh, every time I see something on Twitter, bookmark, especially if it's like a tweet hyping up CU that people just want to get back at. So usually like the BetMGM guy, John Ewing, will tweet out bets on Colorado, and all the replies are like throwing money away. Might as well spend it on this. I have all those bookmarked. They're so ready to go for this.
Yeah, Chase, he's ready to spew some venom back at the haters out there on social media. And I'm trying to think, like the last time we did the shows, I think we stopped doing them right after we found out who the coordinators were, which appeared to be kind of the big dominoes that have fallen. Obviously, we had the spring game, spring practice, all that kind of stuff. Warren Sapp getting kind of settled into Colorado. But I think, with kind of how we started the show here, Chase, to your point, a quiet offseason is a good offseason. Usually if there's a lot of noise, it's in a negative light. And, there's always going to be something about Colorado, right? People always want to talk about Coach Prime and Deion and Shedeur, Travis Hunter. I definitely got some thoughts about those two players as well.
His TikToks, Travis Hunter's TikToks, or more his playing ability?
I think it's a combination of both. The TikTok conversation I am seeing out there. I also saw, I don't want to get into this right now, Field Yates had him mocked to go 11th. In the NFL draft. That seems insane to me.
I think it's going to be higher.
It's got to be. So I don't know. We'll kind of see how it all shakes out. But did you see the news today, though? I think we're going to have to kind of start there because it's the most relevant talking point. The connection between the Buffs and the Saudi Arabian government for NIL money.
PIF.
I don't understand.
The richest investment fund in the world wants to invest in the Colorado Buffaloes. That's all I read. That was the headline that I read. The richest people in the world want to be a part of what's going on in Boulder. They want to be a part of Coach Prime Mania. And who wouldn't? I don't blame them. The PIF wants to get involved. They already have taken over a big portion of golf. I got my Titleist hat on. I just got off the course earlier. So I have covered a lot of the PIF over the past 2-3 years, especially at Action Network. And you know what? At this point, money is money. Of course, they're trying to get as much NIL dollars as possible. But go ahead and tell what happened, what Ross Dillinger reported at Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, so Ross put it out on Twitter that a former Colorado assistant coach, quote, spent time in the Middle East this past holiday season lobbying Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, or the PIF, as you alluded to, for NIL funding on behalf of CU. And this is the first news that I've heard about a college program trying to branch out into the Saudi Investment Fund, or the PIF. But to your point, we've got Live Golf, which is essentially all spearheaded by the Saudi Investment Fund. The UFC is deep into, business relationships with Saudi Arabia and their fund. I think they just bought out. I think I read something like they're taking like the 4 or 5 biggest boxing promotions in the world and kind of conglomerating them all together, backed by Saudi Arabia. The WWE, massive connections with Saudi Arabia. So ethical stuff.
English Premier League is another one that they seem to be taking over. They own teams in England.
Yeah, exactly. And ethics aside, this is just kind of the new norm in sports, where these guys have got more money that they know what to do with. And I understand why some people would be outraged at CU and the assistant coach for even doing this, but this is college football. Like, there are no morals with this stuff sometimes, and I don't know. I just don't understand the problem that so many people are working up about this.
So the assistant coach in question, I'm not sure if you mentioned his name, but it's Trevor Riley. He actually recently departed, and it was only reported, I think, within the last week that he has left the program, but I think he's been gone since before fall camp. He used to run the special teams. He wasn't an official assistant coach, but he was very involved in the special teams. He's very involved in those well-off media videos. He's always running the music and sitting right in front of the monitor. So I think a lot of Buffs fans have gotten accustomed to who he is, but maybe others that don't pay that much attention don't know who he is. Apparently went on a trip. Where's he going? He's going to Saudi Arabia to go meet with the PIF. I don't fully understand how you go and meet in person with these people. I feel like there's a lot of hoops to jump through in order to go meet the leaders of one of the richest countries in the world. But so there's a few questionable parts of this story, but I definitely don't doubt that CU is trying to get NIL money from just about anybody. And it sounds like they weren't they didn't break any rules with what Trevor Riley did. He's just talking to people trying to get NIL money, which is pretty much what every other school is doing right now.
Exactly. And he didn't break any rules. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is like, it's like, there's the old saying, like, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. Like, I don't think that that's the case. Like, this is not cheating. This is just thinking outside of the box a little bit. And I don't even want to say that. Like, and who's to say that some of these SEC schools haven't done the same? Like, maybe it just hasn't come out yet, but like, you're telling me the Georgia booster base would not do anything they could possibly do, or Texas A&M's base could do anything they could possibly do to get as many NIL dollars in here. So maybe CU's the first to do this, but I would be shocked if nobody else tries to do this, is all I'm saying. When these guys have more money than they know what to do with, why would you not at least try to break off a piece for yourself in your program? That's how I look at it.
They're basically the most prominent sports investors out there right now, especially with, as you mentioned, all the different deals. So to have this not cross your mind as a big-time college football program is probably a little bit of oversight when every college program is trying to get as much money as possible. It's become a very money-dominated sport right now with what these players are asking for. So everybody's trying to get NIL money, and I think you're right that people have probably tried to reach out to them. I don't know how interested they would be in investing, because it seems like they'd rather just like take over leagues and sports. And I don't think you're able to put your name on the front of the CU logo or anything like that. So I don't know why they would be interested in it, but we do know that they're trying to get into pretty much every sport out there.
Yeah, and I think it was just due diligence on the part of CU. And like, here's the thing. I know maybe it's not apples to apples. Like, what's more ethical? Reaching out to the PIF in Saudi Arabia and trying to get money, or like some of the stuff that's come out over the years in college football recruiting or college basketball with like Rick Pitino back in the day at Louisville? Like, there have been plenty of lines crossed in the ethics department when it comes to recruiting and NIL and all that kind of stuff, that this would be completely legal, a completely valid way to go about it, And that's the other thing, is we talked about Live Golf. Like, they're literally paying like Ronaldo like $1 billion to play in their league out there in Saudi Arabia. Neymar as well. There's a couple other big time European football players. So I think, well, maybe it's a foreign, uncomfortable concept for us here stateside. Globally, this is just kind of the new norm.
And I'm definitely not a fan of the Saudis. I'll come out and say that. But to think that oil money isn't involved in college football is also kind of crazy. That's where most of these donors in the South have their money from. And you talk about Texas A&M and the amount of money that they've spent on NIL. Where's all that money coming from? It's oil. So this is all kind of interconnected. And I haven't really been on Twitter too much today to see how people are reacting to this. But if people are overreacting about CU trying to get a little bit of oil money, well, I think that's just about what everybody is doing in college football.
Well, and the other part about it that I'll hit home with, Chase, is I think people are going to try to use this as a means to try to tear down Coach Prime. This has nothing to do with Coach Prime outside of the association with the program at which he's running. You make the point that this coach is no longer on the staff, right? This is a former coach, a former member of Coach Prime's staff who is no longer there. And it also sounds like from some of the reporting that, that he went out there on his own. Like, it's not like Coach Prime was like, I need you to go out to Saudi Arabia and, talk to these guys about the PIF and get into some NIL money. It seemed like this was a little bit of a lone horseman who came up with a bright idea in his own right and tried to make it happen.
But AP, come on. How does a random assistant coach show up? And let's say it was Qatar. It might not have even been Saudi Arabia because they're kind of all intertwined. How does someone show up to the Middle East and have a meeting with some of the richest people in the world?
Here's the thing. Here's the quote. I've got it pulled up right now on my Twitter. Riley says, quote, I even went to Saudi Arabia and got a meeting with the Saudis who were interested in pursuing business. I have email receipts to prove it. And you guys let it fall flat on its face. He then continues, this is no longer a quote, but Riley said he acted on his own accord trying to pull in donors. Quote, I did nothing illegal and was trying to help Colorado the best way I know. Sports Illustrated reached out to Colorado Athletics, who did not comment on his trip to the Middle East.
I don't understand how you set up this meeting, but
hey man, I'm coming out to the Middle East. Like, you want to set up a meeting and talk NIL? Like,
he called Yasser, I think is the leader. He called Yasser up on the phone and told him he's showing up in Saudi Arabia. I think. Hey,
we coming to Saudi Arabia. You ready?
Like, over the holiday season too, doesn't he have like a family and stuff he needs?
It is what it is, man. At the end of the day, like, never a dull moment. Like, for any of you out there that like hate the Dallas Cowboys or hate the New York Yankees, this is what it's like to be a fan of an organization or a team like that. Because anything, Coach Prime sneezes, and it's a story in the national media, it seems like these days. But that was the big news story today as we make our maiden voyage into season 2 here of the Sko Show. Again, you can follow me on social at Media by AP. He's at Chase Howell __ on the good old X, formerly known as Twitter. And we're going to be rocking and rolling with the show here on a weekly basis. So make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel as we get deeper and deeper into the season. But let's see, Chase, there's a lot that we could kind of unpack with this team. Like, there's the position aspect of it. There's Coach Prime chirping with the media a little bit. There's the game itself with North Dakota State. Now that we're essentially 7 days out from the start of the season, or maybe a little bit less, depending on what time you guys are watching this show, like, what are the big things that are on your mind when it comes to this Buffaloes program outside of just being excited that football's about to be back?
Well, I think we talked that we were going to talk about preseason expectations. It's really hard to know what to expect. I think we see the Vegas number, we see the 5.5, and I think a lot of us that have followed CU very closely are not expecting 5 or 6 wins out of this team.
Nope.
And I don't know where to have the bar exactly, but I do think that this team is going to overshine the Vegas expectations, and I don't exactly know what to expect this season, but I know it's not going to be around 5 wins. So really, I'm like trying to figure out where I should have my bar.
That's an interesting point. And I think let's dissect that for a second. I think the 5.5 wins, to be honest with you, Chase, I think is less a reflection of the talent and more so a reflection of moving conferences and the schedule that comes with it. Like, I think that the CU team, from a talent perspective, is significantly better than they were last year. I just think the double-edged sword of that is now you're playing in a much more difficult conference, which a much more difficult schedule. So I think when you look at 5.5, and I agree with you, that's not the expectation for Buffs fans here locally. But I think when you look at that number, it's making the point of jumping from the Pac-12 now to the Big 12.
How much more difficult is the schedule, really, though, with no Texas and no Oklahoma in the conference anymore, and just really how good the Pac-12 was last year. I think they played 5 different ranked games, and 4 of those games were one-score games last year. I haven't quite looked enough at what the other Big 12 teams are ranked, but I don't think they're going to play 5 or 6 ranked opponents this year, and they're definitely not going to play them on the road.
No,
it seems like a lot of their difficult games are going to be in Folsom. They're going to play some tough games on the road. And I actually think that's what makes this conference a little bit more tough. That would be the best argument, is I think the road games are more tough in this conference. I think you see a lot more sold out stadiums, a lot more just rowdy crowds in general. And I think that the road games are going to be tough in this conference, but I don't think talent wise, this is a tougher conference than what they played last year. And when you look at the numbers of the players that these teams have recruited, I think CU is second to TCU in terms of 4- and 5-star recruits on their roster. So they're playing a lot of teams that they actually have more talent of, and that was not the case last year. There were at least 4 teams in the Pac-12 that had more 4- and 5-star talent that they played last year. So I don't know if the schedule's more tough. It could be because of the unfamiliarity with these teams, but it's just another reason why I'm not sure exactly what to expect from this season.
It does feel a little bit like a crapshoot, because I've got the schedule pulled up in front of me and kind of dissecting it in layers, if you will. I think those first 3 games, even though 2 of the 3 essentially are sequenced the same way in which they were last year, it's a little bit of a gauntlet. Like, I know they get to open up at home against North Dakota State, and last I checked, I believe CU is about an 8.5-point favorite on the spread for that one. But I was just talking with a buddy of mine who grew up in North Dakota, but he lives out here now and is, a fan of CU and whatnot. Like, even Coach Prime came out and said it, I think it was at Big 12 Media Day, of like, I needed a layup, coming out of the gate. Like, I know that this North Dakota State team isn't, talked about nationally maybe as much as they should be, but this is one of the most renowned FCS programs, and that is going to be a real test. I've said this all offseason. I think we'll know right away with the Buffs. I think we'll get into that. I think I need a half. Give me 2 quarters. And I think we'll be able to see, like, okay, is this a team that is legitimately going to contend for 9 or 10 wins, 8 or 9 wins, or is this a team that's maybe going to be closer to the number? But I think those opening 3 games, NDSU at home, tough, and then on the road at Nebraska. Yes, you beat them pretty thoroughly last year, but now to your point, on the road, and then on the road for the Rocky Mountain Showdown against CSU.
I would agree that the non-conference is definitely more difficult than last year, and that's saying something because they had TCU instead of North Dakota State last year. But as you pointed out, they had Nebraska at home and they had CSU at home, and now going on the road. Although maybe Fort Collins might be half CU fans, I'm not quite sure what to expect in that stadium. But there will be a significant amount of CU fans that make the trip to Fort Collins. But yeah, this non-conference is definitely difficult, and I also agree that I think we're going to find out right away about what this team is. And that's why I'm so excited for Thursday. And right now, I just don't have much of a bar. But when I'm thinking about this schedule, some of the ranked teams that they're going to play, Nebraska might end up being ranked. A lot of people have high expectations. I think they're just outside the top 25 in the preseason poll. Oklahoma State is in the top 25. Kansas is in the top 25. Is Kansas State in the top 25?
Yep.
I don't have a pull.
Kansas State's listed at 18 right now, along with University of Arizona at 21.
So right now there's 4 ranked opponents on the schedule. Is that correct?
Let's see. That is correct. With some other tough games too. You got Cincinnati, UCF could be interesting as well. So,
yep, UCF on the road, Texas Tech on the road. It's going to be a difficult game. So I'm not saying the schedule is easy, but I do think that they played a really tough schedule in the Pac-12 last year. With how good Arizona was, obviously Oregon, UCLA, USC. The schedule last year was also very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, if things hold up, you're looking at 3 consecutive games to end your regular season against ranked opponents. Utah's ranked 12th, Kansas at 22, and Oklahoma State, who I think is consistently a criminally underrated program, down there at the end. And let's see, I believe – or I guess it's 2 of those 3 are going to be at home. So I guess that helps your cause a little bit if you're CU. But I just think the combination of new conference
and the Kansas game is at Arrowhead Stadium, so it's not a true home game. And
yeah,
it can be a true home game, but I think the CU fans are going to be able to travel.
I would. Well, here's the thing: not if they're not in it. And I play a little devil's advocate here because I know that you've got the emotional tie. I'm very interested in CU, but you've got the legitimate tie. I mean, if this team comes out and has egg on their face through the first 4 or 5 weeks, like that might be a bloodbath out there at Arrowhead, depending on how things shake out.
Yeah, that's also true. I could see CU fans not being willing to travel to Kansas City. And I think that there's quite a few CU fans that live in the Midwest that want to travel to that game, but they might not be as interested depending on the record. But how the schedule shakes out right now, I do feel like they could be picking up steam towards the end of the season for those last 3 games.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I think the other thing that we have to talk about here, Chase, when it comes to forecasting the Buff season, and to your point, like we don't really have a base to go off of. And not only do we not have a base because they haven't played in a long time, right? Is they're going to be the start of a new season, but the identity of this team is a lot different, right? Like you still got Shedeur, you still got Travis, you got Shilo, you got some of your core guys and whatnot, but completely new offensive line, completely new defensive line, almost a completely new coaching staff. That like it's almost like what we saw from CU last year, and you and I had talked about this a ton on the Sko Show throughout the year, is last year was the appetizer, right? This is your main entree with CU. You need to see what this team is all about. We talked about it. I think we'll know right away. But also it feels like you're almost starting a little bit, not quite on the ground floor, but maybe on level 1 because of the turnover on the roster and the coaching staff going into this year.
There's a lot of pieces that need to fall into place. And I think the CU fans that have the highest expectations this season, that think that maybe this team could win 10 games, compete for a Big 12 championship, I think they see all of these pieces falling into place. But we don't know what we're going to get out of the coordinators. Both the coordinators really haven't coached in college football. Pat Shurmur and Robert Livingston, yes, they both are very experienced. Most of that has been in the NFL. But it's been a while since Pat Shurmur was an offensive coordinator of a college football team besides the last few games last season, and Robert Livingston has never done it. So we don't know what to expect from the coordinators. And then, as you mentioned, all the different talent. What we do believe, especially as CU fans, is that talent has been heavily upgraded, especially on the defensive and offensive line. And I think that's why everybody has such high hopes for this season. But still, that offensive line needs to all fall into place, and that defensive line needs to fall into place, and what they're scheming up defensively. But this is a team that they definitely had their woes, especially at the end of the season last year. And to those of us that watched the games, it was like, if you clean up this on the defensive line, if you're able to stop the run on the defensive line, and if you're able to give Shedeur a little bit more time, this is a team that probably could have won 8 games last year.
Yeah, no, and things, in my opinion, kind of piled on top of each other. Like once, like that Oregon loss was just awful, right? And then it just seemed like, I know that they bounced back against Arizona State, but some of their issues started to compound on top of each other. But I think you hit the nail on the head where you saw the makings of a really good football team. That's the thing. They have some of the best skill position players in the country, like not just in the Big 12, but like in the country. Their wide receivers, their running backs. Obviously, Shedeur Sanders is probably going to be a top 10 pick, if not top 5, if he has a good year here this season. And I think the question is, did they do enough in the offseason? And did they have enough time to put this together on the fly? You mentioned some of the upgrades. I had the chance, albeit briefly, but I met Jordan Seaton at the Super Bowl. That fool is literally 5 of me. Like I shook his hand and I was like, hello, like I do a CU show, like nice to meet you, like would love to get you on. Like the dude is huge, right? But he's also a true freshman. And you mentioned kind of some of the other new guys that have come into the mix, right? You need to give Shedeur, because that was the thing, man, is I can't tell you how many times I was with super producer Danny Bailey at the games last year, and like
DB, shout out TB. We need him back on.
We're going to get DB in the mix for sure. But it's like Shedeur like doesn't even have time to drop back to pass. It's like he takes his second step and he's already got the linebacker's arms wrapped around him. So I think while the defense is obviously important, they made a lot of upgrades on that side of the ball. To me, the success for Colorado starts and ends with that offensive line.
Absolutely. And we don't quite know what to expect, but how could you not upgrade after what we saw last year? Just how bad that offensive line truly was, especially just if you just looked at the roster and you looked at these 280-pound guards, 290-pound guards, every offensive line, every starting offensive lineman this year, maybe outside of Hank Salinskas, I think he's pushing 300, the center, but every offensive lineman is 305, 310 plus. They have some serious size on the offensive line. So we already know that they're going to improve with that. We don't quite know how good these guys are, but I think it's pretty obvious that this offensive line has to be better.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that's, to me, the foundation of it all. I'm just excited for football to be back, to be honest with you, Chase. And like, I'm hoping like the way that they started the year last year just provided so much. I don't want to say false hope, but like it got you like, whoa, like it's prime time. Like, here we go. Like we're in this stuff. And then to see it kind of fall off in the manner in which it did, like, I'm not going to lie. I still have a little bit of that bad taste in my mouth of like, I'm a little one foot in, 1 foot out. Like, I very much am a believer in this CU team and Coach Prime, but seeing's also believing, right? And I know what I saw at the end of last year. They need to pick it up big time if they want to flip those people over.
CU football seems to definitely be a spectrum. You either remember those 4 games and all you think about is how they started and how good that team could have been, or you just remember the last 8 games and you think about how bad that team looked towards the end of the season. And somehow you fall in the middle, but it doesn't seem like many people on social media fall anywhere in the middle. I know you probably lean more towards the excitement that we had at the beginning of the year, but it just feels like everybody is on the opposite sides right now. And I think that's why it's really hard to predict what this team is going to be this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's just come out and say it. People are preying on their downfall. There's people that do. That's what I was saying, though. Is like, if I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, I know what it's like to like. I know that we've been awful for, well, not awful, but we've been the laughing stock of the league for a minute now. But I know what it's like to have that target on your back, right? Like, think about the Patriots with Tom Brady and company. The Yankees. Everybody loves to dump on the Yankees, and you have very much evolved into that in college football, because that's the thing, is nobody wants to give you anything that you haven't earned. And I think what pisses a lot of people off with CU is they see how much attention they're getting. They're seeing how flashy they are. They're seeing the celebrities that come out to the game. And there's all these other programs that are like, wait, we're closing in. We're in a bowl game every single year. 2 years ago, these guys won 1 game. Last year, they won 4, and they're getting talked about more than us. Well, welcome to sports in 2024. But I think there's a lot of jealousy amongst the media, amongst the fan bases, amongst the college football community, that Deion Sanders can come in here after a couple of years at an HBCU and essentially turn CU into the biggest story in sports. A lot of saltiness, bitterness out there from the people.
And I think the CU fans need to embrace that. I think it's fun. It's fun to be hated. It's fun to matter. It's fun that people care. I've been out on tour, so I talk to people from all over the country, really all over the world. And everybody has an opinion on what CU football is. That is so much more fun than where it used to be, where we were irrelevant. Most people felt bad for us. I hate having people feel bad for us. That just means we suck. That's like the Colorado Rockies. When I tell people that I'm a Rockies fan, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. That must be so hard." I don't want any of that. I'd much rather be hated. That is way more fun. It's also fun when you meet somebody that's on the good side. That's like, I love Coach Prime. So I love rooting for the types of teams that are either hated or loved. I grew up a Notre Dame fan. I think that's probably the closest thing to what CU is getting, because everybody has an opinion on Notre Dame football, and now everybody has an opinion on CU football. And I just love that people care. I love that people care about my program that I have spent so much time paying attention to, that I spent so much time being interested in it. And now so many more people are interested in it because they're just that interesting.
Chase Howell's not ducking the smoke. That's how I interpret that.
I love it. I embrace it.
Bring all the smoke. Get the picture.
Coach Prime, tell me how much you think that they show off and they're too flashy and they're too this and they talk too much. Tell me all of that, because I can't wait to hear what you have to say after this season.
And my favorite part of all that is, even when they won their 4 games last year, I guarantee you, unless you're like a 5-star blue chip prospect with a direct path to the NFL, like if college football is probably the end of your road playing football, I think a lot of people want to play for CU. And I don't think that there's many people that can. And I think from amongst the community as well, like Jordan Seaton was talking about it in regards to his recruiting process, a lot of people were trying to tear CU down and tear Coach Prime down. I think a lot of that hate and bitterness comes from the fact that they're on the outside looking in, and they see all the money and all the moves and all the attention that Coach Prime is getting, and they say, I wish that was me. I wish I could be a part of that, but I'm not.
And in this day and age, they just rather hate instead of just admiring it.
It's easy to hate in this day and age. But I will say this, at the end of the day, you got to back it up, because if CU if they win 4 games this year, I don't think that's going to be the case. If they have a losing record, right? What does that all mean? Like, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, you're still going to get your bag, right? These guys are going to have their money. And it really is. Coach Prime has been consistent on this, and nobody wants to talk about it because it's not as juicy as trying to contend for a spot in the playoff. He's always said the reason you've got Pat Shurmur and Robert Livingston in there is to train these players for the next level. It's not solely about winning for Colorado and winning as many games as you possibly could. It's as much about making sure that these guys are prepared and ready to go play in the NFL.
It's also, for us as fans, it's still a win-win situation. Yes, if they end up winning just 4 games, which I also don't think is going to happen, we're going to have to hear it from people. But that is way better than the situation that we were in 2 years ago. I would take that a million times, winning 4 or 5 games a year again. I don't ever want to go back to what that team was under Carl Durrell. So I feel like we can't lose.
I honestly, I think that's
one of the best this season.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to look at it. That's the thing is you can't lose because you're either going to be talked about a ton or you're going to win some football games and still be talked about. Right. And so I think to your point, like you were talking about how people were almost sympathetic, feeling sorry for you for a long time because of the state of the program and whatnot. Obviously their tenure in the Pac-12 was pretty bad, compared to historically what this program has been accustomed to. And so I think only up from here, right? Like when you were as bad as they have been for the last couple of seasons before Coach Prime, you can't really go any lower. And so whether it's manufactured through the media or manufactured through wins on the football field, it's only up for this Buffs team, I would say.
It's a great spot to be. And that's why I think I'm so excited to see what happens next Thursday night, because that's just going to set the tone for the rest of the season. And it's going to set the tone for probably my happiness as well.
Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, couple more things before we get out of here. Let's get this on the record now, because I'm going to be curious to come back to it at the end of the year. Is Coach Prime still head coach for CU after this season? Or is it a coaching of his kids and Travis and he's done? Or is he going to be here for the long haul? What does Chase Howell think?
I probably do think it's close to 50-50. I will lean on the side of he ends up returning. I'm trying to think of the amount of scenarios that would make him leave. Now, they win 10-plus games. I think CU's probably in trouble of being able to keep him around. They win somewhere between 6 and 8. I kind of feel like he would want to return. He would want to keep building what he's already put so much effort into, and he'd probably have a roster of pretty talented players planning to return. And I would guess, and maybe one of the big things that we don't know yet is who's going to be the quarterback next year. And if that guy can motivate Coach Prime to stay for a few more years. And if it is a guy like Julian Lewis, then I would feel very, very comfortable about Coach Prime staying. Or maybe more likely than Julian Lewis is going in the transfer portal and getting one of the best players out of there, probably using some Saudi money to be able to get him.
It's a good point. I think it's an interesting thought that you bring up of double-digit wins in the moment is good for CU. But double-digit wins, I think, just only adds to the credibility and the attractiveness of Coach Prime to a Big Ten school or an SEC school. Or I don't think he's an NFL guy. I don't know. I don't know if there's any situation that ever opens up.
Does your boy Jerry Jones go out and get him if CU wins 10 games this year? You don't think Jerry Jones would pull every single string he possibly can to get him to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys if CU wins 10 games?
I think it would have to be a package with Shedeur. I think, because here's the thing. You think Deion would coach a team with Shedeur being on another team?
No, but how do you pull that off? You go the John Elway method or Eli Manning method? How
I don't know.
That happen?
And he's come out and kind of debunked that, right? Because like one of the bigger topics during the offseason when we weren't doing the show was like this speculation that there's like 4 teams that Shilo and Shedeur are, considering being drafted by or playing for. And then I think Coach Prime kind of came out and debunked that in his own right. I saw a mock today that has Shedeur going to Tennessee. So like, I don't know. And that's the other thing is like, we have to see how this whole season plays out. If Shedeur Sanders goes out there, balls out and is in Heisman Trophy contention, right? Like you're looking at a surefire, probably top 5, top 10 pick. If the offensive line is doo-doo and things are just awful and he's getting sacked every play, maybe he's more of a mid to late first round pick type of guy. I don't think that'll be the case just because it's a little bit of a weaker quarterback class, right? You got Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck maybe coming out too. But it is one of those situations where I just think if Deion were going to coach in the NFL, I think it would be to coach Shedeur. I think that would be the one thing. I don't know if he'd want to coach Shilo because, like, it's just like Shilo would be one player in a system versus the quarterback where you're kind of the end all be all when it comes to running the show. So I don't know. I'd welcome him though. I'd welcome the watch on the Cowboys with the star, baby.
I'd hate every second of it.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun if Shedeur and Deion became the Cowboys 1-2?
It's still like the one team because I think we just know how much Jerry Jones loves Coach Prime, and I'm sure there's other owners and GMs that really like Coach Prime, but it's the one team where Jerry Jones pulls all the strings for that team, and I think he would just do whatever it takes. CU would have to win a lot of games this year for that to happen, but yeah, to your point, I just think that the more that this team wins, the more likely Coach Prime leaves. Now, if they only win 4 games, maybe Coach Prime just calls it quits coaching altogether. I think that would be the other end of the spectrum. But if it's somewhere in between, I do feel like he's going to return.
Yeah, I think it's the crazy part is there really is limitless opportunities or limitless concepts that I think could play out here. Like 6 wins means that, 8 wins means that, 10 wins means this, 4 wins means this, right? And so I think it's just going to be very dependent on how everything plays out for Colorado and what options are going to be in front of them, right? Because shoot, dude, if you would have told me 2 years ago in the middle of the year that Colorado would have been a legit contender for Deion, I would have said you're crazy. I even remember having conversations with you before it happened. Like, is this real? Like, huh? And then it all kind of came together. And that's the Coach Prime effect. It seems like, he kind of just everything comes in bombs with him where it's like you don't really expect this stuff, but it's Coach Prime, so he's going to do things his way, and away we go. So I'm curious to see how it all plays out, my friend. But what else is on your mind? Any other pressing thoughts you want to get off your chest before we get out of here?
One thing about next Thursday, just because when you said that, all I think about is this opening game against North Dakota State. Coach Prime put out a tweet. I didn't realize the game's not sold out. They've sold out like 4 other games this year. Why is the North Dakota State game not sold out?
It's not sold out?
He put out a tweet that was like, fill Folsom Field. And so it made me
assume
the game's not sold out.
Will they pull off the stripe outing? They're supposed like
that was another thing I was thinking about on my mind, right?
What are they? They're doing black and white stripes, I believe.
I think they will. I think those that are going to these games are very committed to what's going on.
I think it's also. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like back in the day, even Coach McIntyre, or even probably Mel Tucker, like those fans. Yes, they love CU. Did they really care about the whole product and what we were showing to the rest of the country? I don't know, but I do think that the fans that are going to be going to the game next Thursday night, they care enough to wear white if they're in a white section, or wear black. It's black, right? Black and white. Wear black if they're in a black section. All I know is that I'm in the wear white section.
There you go. And it's one of those situations.
I already got my white on.
Yeah, you're ready to go. And I'll say this on the outing. I think it's smart to do it in the first game, right? Like hype, people are excited, school's back in session, right? Like everyone, you just kind of have like that fresh energy that kind of comes along with it versus like November.
Have you seen the new LED lights in Folsom?
Yeah.
Have you seen the video of that? That's cool, isn't it?
And we got the new scoreboard.
Night game, new scoreboard, black and white. I think it'll be very, very well presented to the entire country.
Yeah.
How many viewers do you think we're going to get? Curious to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to be pushed 10. I think last year the highest was over 10 mil, right? Just over 10 mil, 11 mil.
Yeah. I don't. What's the rest of the schedule look like on that day? I think that'll dictate it as much as anything.
I don't think there's that much competition. I don't think big time programs.
I think I'll confidently say right now over 10 mil because people are starved for football. I think people would watch any football they can get their hands on, but then you throw in the polarizing aspect of it being Coach Prime and CU on a Thursday when you're starved for football. Yeah. Buckle up. Get your popcorn ready.
Yeah. The way you just laid that out, I think they're going to get 12 million viewers.
Yeah. I like it. Okay. I also want to get this on the record before we get out of here. What game are you most excited for from the Buffs this season?
I think I got to go Nebraska. It's been on my mind. There's already a lot of shit talk on Twitter. Nebraska fans love being in CU mentions right now. I don't know if CU fans are in Nebraska mentions as well, but I see how pumped up Nebraska is for this game. I see their disdain for CU. And really, if you know the history of this rivalry, like Coach Mack, he made it a rivalry. It was basically like he was like, hey, we all hate Nebraska, and that's just what we're going to do. Nebraska never really chose to hate us. We kind of forced them into it by giving them bad experiences when they were in Boulder, and they started to not like us. But they have always talked about other rivals. Nebraska's always been our main rival. And I think what we hear from Nebraska fans right now in Nebraska shows and these different clips that I've been seeing running around, Nebraska finally really hates us. And I think that makes for such an exciting game. We've beaten them for over 3,000 days. I think I was probably 6 years old the last time that Nebraska beat CU. So this game is probably as important of a rivalry game that CU has played in a very long time, especially with the expectations on both these teams and it being week 2. I just can't imagine a game being more important than that on this schedule.
Yeah, and I think you factor in how the game played out last year, right? And now Matt Rule has had the opportunity.
Yeah, we beat the shit out of them, AP. That's all I remember.
It was a good time. And I think that was like that 10 a.m. kickoff, right? That was like the big noon kickoff. Mm-hmm. Like I remember, I think Lil Wayne played outside that day, if I remember correctly. Urban Meyer was getting bottles thrown at him. Like it was a crazy time. So I would say, because the Nebraska game is definitely one that I've got my eye on. I gotta say the Rocky Mountain Showdown, dude. Like the fact after just the smack talk with him and Jay Norvell, and then how it all came out in the Prime documentary after the fact. And I'll say it because I know you won't. I think CSU's actually got a little bit of a squad. Like I like Torrey Horton. I like the quarterback.
What do you mean? I show my respect. I do like Torrey Horton.
They got some players, man. And I was on the middle of the field last year pregame when Shedeur and I think it was Torrey Horton were jawing back and forth. Like I literally have like a video like this, like with Shedeur like right here, like, you know, you guys ain't shit, like all this kind of stuff. Like, and the fact also that it's in CSU. I know last year was in Folsom, but no more neutral field BS. Right? Like you get to go up there, give the Rams a chance to get their get back. That was a super competitive game last year, ended at like 2:00 in the morning. I just think, and I'm also a local interest guy, that is going to be a spectacle. CSU Rocky Mountain Showdown in Fort Collins. See how many CSU fans show up, see how many CU fans make the voyage. I cannot wait for that game.
Yeah. So we start out with basically a home opener that everybody's just excited to finally get to see this team on a Thursday night game. And then we have Nebraska CSU back-to-back. These first 3 weeks are going to be absolute nuts. I think I'm going to need what does John Rothstein say? Nitroglycerin pills to calm down the heart. When your heart starts beating a little too fast, I think I'm going to need to bring some nitroglycerin pills for basically the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, it is going to be a spectacle. It is here. Football is here. We are just days away, less than a week from the Buffs starting their college football season. And we're going to be right here on the Sko Show each and every week, breaking down the news and notes from the Colorado Buffaloes. And I can also say this, number 38. We're going to have some fun at number 38 this year. If you've never heard of it, follow us on social at Mile High Sports. We did a ton of watch parties down there. It's a fantastic indoor-outdoor bar restaurant concept. I know, Chase, you're going to join me for a handful of shows during these watch parties after the games. So make sure to just follow us on social media at Mile High Sports for all the details. But for any of the Buff faithful out there, any of the Sko Show listeners that are in or around the Denver metro area, we are going to have a home for you to watch the games, congregate with other Buffs fans. We're going to have giveaways, try to get some people to some games with our tickets and whatnot. So make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel, as we're going to have content, not just on the Sko Show, but also before and after each game throughout the course of the season.
I think I saw Jake Shapiro tweet yesterday talking about how there's like no good sports bars in Denver anymore, especially after our beloved Blake Street Tavern went down. Number 38 is a real sports bar, especially when you're able to watch the game outdoors on that big screen. Hopefully there's some great weather for the Nebraska game, because I'm going to be outdoors having probably a mountain time in my hand, watching that Nebraska game, and probably freaking out a little bit. But I'll try to stay as calm as possible during that big game.
Yeah, we can freak out together. It's going to be a good time, and we can, make sure that we're nice and ready to go with the mountain time. Can't recommend it enough. Our friends over at number 38 have been an incredible partner. The food there is also like off the charts. Like it's not just regular bar food. Like it is like maybe one of the best burgers I've ever had in my life, to be honest with you. So I'm super excited for the watch parties at number 38. I'm super excited to get the Sko Show back in the saddle and rocking and rolling with my guy Chase Howell. And I'm excited for Colorado Buffaloes football season. But all right, my man, closing thoughts. Anything you want to get off the chest before we get out of here?
We're back, baby. Let's do this.
It's going to be a good season, man. I am looking forward to it. And I know you guys are too. So make sure to subscribe to the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. Join us out at number 38 for the watch parties. And away we go. But we'll be back at it again next week as we get ready to really dive into some Colorado Buffaloes football. See you, North Dakota State, game 1 coming up in just about a week's time. And we'll have it covered for you right here on the Sko Show on Mile High Sports. For Chase Howell, I am Aniello Piro. Follow him on social at Chase Howell _. I'm at Media by AP. We're back. We're ready. We're excited. And we'll talk to you guys on the next episode. Sko Buffs.
Sko Buffs.